our Parks and Recreation Commission for Tuesday, January 9th.
Yeah.
And we have full quorum. So we'll approve last month's minutes, if you guys want to read through those or take a look at them for a minute.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Well,
Second.
minutes approved. All right, new business. Chris?
Yeah, very quickly, Commissioners, I want to welcome Mr. Tim Stanley as our new Parks and Recreation Commissioner. He was here with us tonight, thankfully, and Ms. Nicole is going to read his oath of office for him, and then after we do that, Tim, I'd like to give you a minute just to tell the Commission about yourself briefly.
Well, Tim, welcome. I, Tim Stanley, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the States of Minnesota, and the ordinances of the City of Hastings, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Parks and Recreation Commissioner of the cities of Hastings, counties of Dakota, and Washington and state of Minnesota, according to the best of my ability and understanding. Congratulations, Commissioner.
I forgot to mention, Tim, that the little button, green light, is go for talk, and if you want to turn it off in between, you're welcome to do so as well. That helps the audience at home hear us. Technical difficulties, my bad.
Okay, no worries.
So yeah, if you want to give, Tim, if you want to give us a brief, just introduce yourself to the Commission and those who may be watching or viewing, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I've been living in Minnesota for about 6.5 years now, specifically in Hastings. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, actually, so my Bills lost this last weekend, but made it to the playoffs for the first time in 17 years, so we'll just be happy about that. My wife and I met in New York at school. She's originally from Minnesota. Her family still lives here. They live in St. Anthony Village. My mother-in-law is very involved in the community there, and we actually went to graduate school at Bethel, and then when I graduated from Bethel for graduate school, we moved to the Dominican Republic for 3 years, and then from the Dominican Republic, we moved back here to Hastings, where I served as the Young Life and Wildlife Director here in Hastings. And so I, about 8 months ago, transitioned into my role as pastor of Crossroads Church right next to Coburn's, so the grocery store church. And we've been going for about 6 weeks. We've been officially open for about 6 weeks. So we love Hastings. I have 3 boys. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. We are all sort of dealing with the cold of this time of year with the flu bug and the post cough and all that entails for 6 weeks after and all of that, but and they love being here as well. So I grew up in kind of a small town outside of Buffalo, and so we love the small town pieces of Hastings as well. And
Missing out on the snow that Buffalo usually gets.
I'm not missing out on it, but they're getting it, yes. That's what my dad always says. I'd prefer the snow over the cold, and it depends what day it is, and some days I agree with him and some days I don't, but yeah. So that's a little bit about me, and this is the first kind of commission or anything that I've ever been a part of, so I was telling Chris, I'm excited to learn, and you know, as I was reading through the notes that were sent out by Paige, a lot of those terms were very foreign to me, so I was like Googling them as I was reading through them and just trying to understand. So I'm excited to learn and to be a part of this community and to invest some time outside of, you know, necessarily the church building. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll go on to item B here, a resignation from Commissioner Jolynn Augustin. Like I said here in your memo, that she has some other obligations come up that no longer left time for this commission. So we have that. There's no formal action that needs to be taken by this commission, just a little advisory. So we have another applicant from our round of commission interviews that the interview panel is suggesting to City Council Mr. Bruce Karnick, and that action will be before City Council on January 15th. So we'd be looking for Mr. Karnick to join us in February, provided everything goes well. I don't see why it would not. So we will once again be full. And now, Chelsea, we can let you take this one. Simply that it's the next piece of business that needs to be taken care of.
We need to appoint a new chairperson. So, does anyone want to put their name in the hat amongst us?
Yeah. And like I said in the memo and previously, there is no time as far as time served that needs to be had on this commission. If anybody is interested in being the chair, you're running the meetings, you speak with me, we help put together agenda items. On occasion, you may report to the City Council. I would be there with you, but kind of the runner of the meetings here for us, and I believe that everybody that's on this commission absolutely has the capacity to do so. So don't be intimidated by what you think chairperson might mean.
Are we also going to be appointing a vice chair tonight?
We are not. I can get to that
okay.
quickly. If you want that, that recommendation by this commission is currently in the, what do we do?
Gotcha.
Reviewed with legal, and then that needs to go to City Council as well.
Okay. What if no one's going to speak up?
Then you are welcome to nominate somebody.
No one wants to speak first?
I believe that I had shown interest in it, but I was speaking with Chris, and I need to take a 2-month leave of absence, so I believe that we wanted to get someone in place now. So I have to take myself out.
I certainly can, if that's what you want, but if there's others that really want to do it, I don't want to stand in your way. So by all means, if others have interest in this and it really connects with them, don't be shy, okay? I've been a little more absent as of late, this past 6 months. I'll be better going forward, but that's always a concern with me a little bit. But I'd be happy to do it and honored, but by all means, if others want to do it and they really feel like this is something they want to try out, jump forward. New guy, maybe? No? No?
No. I would be willing to put my name out there as well if anyone else is not going to speak up.
I move nominations be closed.
Can you get a second?
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
There's a motion before the body.
Just,
Well,
I mean, there's,
I move that Chelsea is our chairman for the calendar year 2008.
I'll second that.
so the motion passes?
all those in favor?
Or all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No opposed, the motion prevails.
Official.
Official. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I appreciate that.
Right.
Okay, so next area of business is our comprehensive plan, classification of parks and the criteria.
Yes, I hope that each of you had an opportunity to read through the classification system that is in our current comprehensive plan. And just as a starting point for understanding, this commission often deals with land dedication issues, where recommendations are made on creating a new park within a subdivision or taking cash in lieu or a combination of both. So this is where this part of the comprehensive plan is where those decisions are based out of. And we have some examples. There's been many times where this commission has focused more on size of acreage, and there has been a threshold of 3 acres that's been put out there a lot. While that is a minimum recommended, we also have parks in town that are smaller, down to an acre in size, with Eagle Bluff being one of those. And we have before us, for the past couple of months, the issue of a park in Glendale Heights. So I want to make sure that the commission has a full understanding of the park classification system, specifically with neighborhood parks, just so when we're moving towards getting a site location for Glendale Heights, whatever that is, we have an understanding. You also have an understanding of what is typically involved in a neighborhood park as far as the elements and amenities that are included, and an understanding too that, right, kind of what I've been getting after is it's a flexible application, right? So neighborhood park doesn't have to be 6 to 10 acres, and it doesn't have to include everything that's suggested. Those are baselines and ideals. So the intent of putting this together and providing it to you once again, and everybody should have a copy, a full copy of the comprehensive plan. This is just breaking out one small section that that we've been dealing with here recently. And with that, I just wanted to have a general discussion. If anybody has questions, or if you have pieces and parts of this that maybe I can help you understand better, or perhaps you can help me understand better, any of that. So just really wanted to see if there was some conversation to be had about the classification system and understandings of that. You can see I highlighted some of the things that stuck out in my head as part of the packet as well too. And I apologize, I could have probably had this on a PowerPoint show as well, but it sounds like our new chairperson is going to make that a requirement.
Chris, looking at the guidelines here, neighborhood parks are the basic units for the park system, serving recreational and a social purpose, focusing on activities and passive recreation. Neighborhood parks are typically 5 acres or more. I know we discussed it. It goes on further that it may be impractical, and there are parks that 1 to 3 acres of developable land. But the point I wanted to get across, the service area for these parks is basically looking at a radius, a quarter-mile radius for mini parks, and up to a half-mile radius typical for a neighborhood park. And looking at the development in that part of the community, you know, trying to stay close to that half-mile area, we're gonna have to look at those areas that are open along that the city already owns, and, you know, try and stay as close as possible, I think, to be within that half-mile radius for that area.
Yep, certainly the ideal situation is to remain within that half-mile service area. And with that Glendale Heights area there being the most populated, right? There's a development to the south of Spiral as well, but there's far fewer residences in that than there is to the north there.
Right.
So yeah, ideally we're staying within a half a mile for what would be a neighborhood park, and even down to a quarter mile if you get into a much smaller park. Yeah, it's got to stay close.
I just wanted to make sure that that was pointed out, because some people watching at home say, when we're talking about something, we're not giving enough information for the consumer at the other end of the TV screen.
Very good to know. So please write us, let us know. Yes, and the playground equipment that is at Veterans Athletic Complex is just that. It is playground equipment. It is not a neighborhood park. That is a sports complex, and it has an open period and a closed period, right? It's open in the spring, closed in the fall. And that's just because the use there is specific to athletics. While people can still walk through it and whatnot, there's no vehicular traffic allowed during the wintertime, which cuts off the ability for neighbors to use that park if it's colder outside and you want to get close, or if you have somebody that's mobility impaired, to be able to get them to the playground. So, yeah, good points.
Chris, I was wondering if you could explain, could you give an example of when it talks about key consideration with flexible use of policies? How does that pop up, and what do we look at there? So it's on page 3.3.
3.3? What I would point to in that particularly is, so key considerations with flexible use policies for those that are watching or listening. The key example that's brought out in here is organized athletics in neighborhood parks.
Okay.
While that is an accommodation, it is intended to be temporary. So that's being flexible with the space, because a lot of our neighborhood parks have athletic fields built in. The intent of those athletic fields is for the neighborhood pickup game, or the group coming, you got a family reunion and you want to play a game of kickball. That's the intended use for a neighborhood athletic field. And our current comprehensive plan goes on to talk about that a little bit more and breaks down some of the parks as well as it pertains to athletics in there. But that's an example of being flexible with a neighborhood park classification.
Okay.
So point being that maybe you have a great idea and a great program that needs a home. It doesn't really fit with how that park is supposed to be used, what it's intended to be used for. But that activity needs a home, maybe just for a little while, a few years to get it off the ground before it can be included in part of something else that's being built in town. So remaining flexible to be able to take care of the needs of the community with the assets that we currently have, but looking down the road too to how are we going to sustain that. Any other questions or comments on that section of our comp plan?
Any other comments? I don't think so.
All right, we'll move along then. The second part is also something that this commission is charged with often, is the land dedication piece of our subdivision ordinance. In basic terms, if there is a plat, a replat, or a subdivision of land, there's a requirement that land be dedicated to the city for multiple purposes. One of those is park dedication. So if a new residential subdivision is going to be constructed on what is now vacant land, and that land is within the city, when that land is subdivided into individual lots for residences, there's a computation that is made based on that site plan, right? So the number of lots, the type of housing, the number of units, all that stuff. Because what that then does is it adds a recreational need to the community. So there should be land dedicated for that. So we have land dedication in physical land, and we have cash in lieu of land. which is what this commission has dealt with in, over the past, I don't know, I'll call it a year, with a variety of different subdivisions. There
Does that
can
not
also-
include industrial land?
Industrial
Is
is,
that only for
Yep.
residential land?
yep, it's a different computation, and you can see that through the ordinance.
Okay,
But yeah, when there's industrial as well,
okay.
industrial, commercial, it's just a different
Or
computation.
farm even,
I don't know that it states agriculture,
okay.
but it's when there's a plat, a replat, or a subdivision of land.
Okay,
So if it was ag, coming out of ag and put into residential, yes. Because that's going from one, call it a 40-acre lot, down to individual half-acre lots.
okay.
So they've got to dedicate land for streets, for utilities, and for parks, and a variety of other things.
Okay.
But, yeah, so that's not only physical land or cash in lieu, it can be a combination of the two. And the commission and the city council also have the ability to provide credits to perhaps the landowner, the developer. If the developer constructs a park, playground type of area, they can construct a private one within that subdivision, and they get credit for that. May not be a full credit, but it's credit. And that may be a situation where the developer builds it and then turns it over to the city, or whether when the builder builds it and retains ownership and maintenance of that as well. So they can get credit for that. So it's all this big computation based on, and the dollar amounts are in the ordinance. Most recently, the Glendale Heights, that is it a 79-unit apartment complex, something like that. That came to about $90,000 in cash in lieu of land. So the money that's dedicated for that, by law, must be used for land acquisition to build parks, the development of parks, so actually turning the bare ground into a park, or the redevelopment of an existing park, and in our case in Hastings, within that ward. So money that comes from Ward 1 has to stay in Ward 1, similar with Ward 2, 3, and 4. Does that make sense? Everyone tracking? Okay. And there's the computation, I think, that was last done, I'm going to call it 10 years ago. So that may be a subject that I bring back before this commission, is to look at that formula. There's a lot that goes into it, as far as what is the current market value of land, what's the current level of service for our residents, the number of park acres per 1,000 residents or 100 residents. All that sort of stuff comes into that computation. It's a big one. And the fee that is charged, that land dedication fee, or that physical land dedication, that amount of land, is based in rough proportionality. It's the nexus. So it's a fun one. I've attended a number of professional discussions on it with Dr. John Crompton, who is kind of the spearhead of it, or the man with the most knowledge in the country, I believe, right now on this particular subject. So it's a big beast, but because this commission deals with it so much, this is one of those pieces that we all need to be very, very familiar with as we move forward. So every time we get to, when Mr. Hinsman comes in and we're talking about a new development, let's go back, review this whole thing, review our current parks map, review the projected land uses in our current comp plan, and after December of 2018, our new comp plan, or our updated comp plan. So it's reviewing all that stuff when those decisions are made. So you have all the tools at your disposal to be able to have that conversation here at commission, and ask those hard questions. It's hard work. Questions on land dedication stuff? I can't quote it to you. I can't quote you the figures, but I can certainly find them in the memo here.
I have a question, so when, say, a developer comes in and is gonna build housing of some sort, and they decide to construct something within there as part of the land or cash in lieu, does that have to be accessible to the public, or can that just be for, say, like, the residents of that apartment complex or community?
It would not get credit for something that is totally private. If it is just for the residents there, they would not get credit for it.
And if it's gonna be public where, you know, anyone can come in and use it, is there any, like, guidelines on what they have to do, or is it kind of at their choice?
It would be something that I would expect that the developer
Okay.
would work with our department and probably this commission on. And we're certainly gonna point them to national standards
Yeah.
and all those sorts of things. If it's gonna be something that's open to the public and they're gonna retain it and own it, they're certainly gonna wanna make sure that it meets all the current playground standards. So we would help them out with that if needed. But any other questions from anybody? Major discussion on land dedication and stuff?
That's a lot,
It is.
a lot to take in.
Need further review.
Yeah. Yeah, so keep that one. That's also in your new commissioner packet that you would have too, is those land dedication ordinances and examples and some more layman's terms about it as well. But that's the nitty-gritty right from the city's list of ordinances. And anybody can find those on the city's website as well too. And this one is what, 15407. It's a fun one.
And you had said that this was roughly 10 years ago that this was established?
The last computation.
Okay.
So I think we've had land dedication for quite some time.
Yep.
But the last adjustment was made in that computation, what
Okay,
the
as far
dollar
as term,
figures.
okay,
Yeah,
yep,
what the dollar figures are for that.
okay.
Is that reviewed roughly every 10 years or so, or is there a schedule on that?
It should be much more often.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
land values adjust quite frequently, so.
Yep, and I know that in the past couple of years, just dabbling in the subject a little bit as part of what I do, trying to figure out what the current market value is for vacant land in Hastings is very hard. There's not much of it, so you don't have a giant base to grow from or to get that information from. And most of the vacant land is already part of something that has been platted, so that's for sale as a residential lot, which isn't vacant land in Hastings. That's ready to build land, so it's hard to get that computation. But something we're gonna have to do. But yeah, it should be reviewed regularly, and our comp plan points us to that. And just best practices points us to that as well. More work for you. Well, without any other
Comments?
questions on that,
Any updates on the playground coming to that? Site
under
selection?
old business here,
Yeah.
I
Old business?
there aren't any major updates. I've done a little poking around as far as what the city may need to do, and I actually took a little drive out today as well too. So I think in my head, some of the lots that we talked about here as a commission, there's probably 8 lots together or something like that in one section. It's a pretty big piece of open ground. I'm trying to figure out how, if that was a thought, how to go about inquiring about that. I gotta make sure that I stay within what I'm supposed to be doing for the city, and but we may investigate those, and same thing with the property to the north, that private property. Do we just inquire as to that landowner if they're interested in selling a piece of that? No idea, but we'll continue to look into that. And outside of that is looking at the current city-owned land too. And again, that land was just recently rezoned. Well, that piece wasn't rezoned, but it is commercial industrial land that borders it to the west, that whole Glendale Heights development.
Would the planning commission be able to help us out on inquiring on those open land north and within Glendale Heights?
We'll likely need to get some direction from city council on
Okay.
on what to do. You know, the current land, you know, if I look into Dakota County GIS system, I can tell exactly what that land is zoned for currently.
Yeah.
And we can look at our comp plan and see what it's guided for as well. And the hiccup with the Glendale Heights and our current comp plan is there's a red dot directly to the east of, help me out with the road, that's just to the
Spiral?
east.
Rush, or,
It's the road over
Spiral.
the hill.
Yeah, not Spiral, but where Spiral meets down on the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that road.
Is that Glendale?
Is it Glendale
No.
54 or
Yeah, it's County Road.
It's got a couple names.
County,
Glendale County Road 91.
Yeah.
Yep.
County Road 91. Okay.
Yep.
So in our current map, in our comp plan, it shows a little red dot on the east side of that, which is, it doesn't serve the purpose for what we're looking at here. But again, that's a futuristic look from 10 years ago on what the park system might look like. So there was a dot identified in the area. It just happens on the map that it's on the east side of that county highway 91. And there's no development over there. There's individual homes over there and some businesses over there, but it's not an area where there's a big number of residents. So trying to put a park in over in that area doesn't make any sense.
No,
That's
it's a
even further
valley
from-
and there's
Yeah.
homes in there and
Well, that's even
Extreme
further from the
Sandbox
other
isn't
lots.
far from there.
Yeah,
All,
It's a big-
all of those areas are on,
Yeah, the San Coolius and
those
A.
homes have been there a long time.
Yep.
Yep.
And because it's a valley and there's steep hills on each side, you can't develop around them.
And you're farther down, you're away from the development of water and sewer there,
Mm-hmm.
so.
It's too far.
So it's an ongoing issue, and like I've said before, I intend to leave it just as a standing item on this commission's agenda. Again, with the encouragement to be creative and look at stuff and think about ideas and what might work. Is it multiples, little parks? Is it one big park? But with the understanding that it's all got to kind of be centered around that development at this point, trying to provide service to those residents.
Chris, I think that Ben is on the right track there a little bit. We need to kind of maybe direct you to see if you could touch base with Hinsman or the council looking for
Mm-hmm.
some more input.
Yep, that's my next step, is to get some council direction.
Thank you.
Just haven't gotten there yet. I had Christmas and
Department updates?
department updates. So you know, this commission last month made recommendations on the Hastings Hawks agreement, the advertising agreement with Hastings Hawks, and those two items are in the hands of our city attorney for review, and I'm sure some tweaks, some modifications. He's very good at that stuff. So waiting to hear back from him. My ask of him was that I would like to be able to take that stuff to city council in February. So I'm not looking for it next week, but I'd like to be able to do that. So the recommendation from this commission is known, and that would be the supporting information that goes with those finalized agreements to city council. So looking for that. The EAB program, that was on a previous city council after this commission recommendation. That's the 2018 private and Boulevard tree treatment program, like we did last year with Rainbow Tree Care. And if you remember, Jeff came in and gave us a presentation on what they were able to do, 420 trees. I can't remember if it was 7,000 diameter inches of tree or what that number was, but I know it was 422 trees. council approved that, and I've sent 3 businesses those proposals, so I'm awaiting those back. They have a March deadline to turn those in. So once we get those, we'll look to make the recommendation for who that's going to be for 2018. And if you'll recall, we did the one. We're looking for one. We're not looking for multiples. The pricing for residents was better when we looked for one. So. And then the PRC, the ordinance change that Chelsea alluded to.
Sorry.
That's fine. It's just the last thing on the agenda. In looking over the ordinance again with our city attorney, and to be consistent with other commissions, it was recommended to have a chair and an acting chair. Not necessarily a vice chair, but chair and acting. So my thought was, and commission welcome your ideas, is now we have a chair, and in February we will be a full commission. So then at that time, let's look to set an acting chair as well. So everybody can be in the mix on that. And then whoever that person is could be the one that's in line for chair if they so choose. And again, the chair is a 1-year commitment, and that acting chair would fill in for the chair if the chair was unable to make the meeting. So we have some consistency, and we have a couple of people that are trained up on how to run meetings, and it's not so intimidating the first time that you say, Miss Chelsea, would you do this for us tonight? So that's where that is right now, and the rest of the language is was good to go as far as the way that we do interviews now. Used to come before this commission, now it goes before an interview panel where the chair of this commission will sit on those interviews. So that's all I got, other than the warming houses and ice skating rinks are up and open. Get out and enjoy those things. The trails are always out there. Get out there and enjoy those. Certainly if you run into any sort of issue in any of our parks, if you see something that's broken or something that's in the wrong spot or something that used to be there, you think something used to be there and it's not there anymore, let us know. So there's plenty of ways to get a hold of us through the city website, through Facebook, through phone calls, and we like to hear that information.
I have one thought, that we maybe could advertise a little bit more the parks when we redo a park,
Mhm.
like Wilson
Mhm.
and soon be Lions. We could kind of put a post out on Facebook and, hey, come check out the
Sure.
newly redone park and everything we've done to it and all
It-
the upgrades.
It has been suggested that we do a grand opening when we do those parks, or a grand reopening for those playgrounds. So I think that's what we're gonna
Cool.
run forward with.
Cool.
And don't you worry, I will be asking this commission to be in attendance and to help us out with those and be the cheerleader for the parks. What a great way to meet neighbors, maybe not in your neighborhood, but in other neighborhoods, and you might know some of the other people there too. So, and again, the more our commissioners are out in the community, bending an ear and listening to other residents, the more information we get back here. It's helpful for us when we're trying to do our work. But yes, and with Lions Park, I guess I can give you a quick update. I'm looking to hold a public meeting about that, kind of a public open house meeting about that park before the end of the month. I want to give it a week and a half, 2 weeks to be able to get that information out. I don't want to be too far in advance, and I don't want to be too short in advance. So I'm looking at the week of the 23rd to do some sort of public meeting where I want to invite people in. And it's more than just the neighborhood. Absolutely want the neighbors in there, but more than just the neighborhood because of what Lions Park is. It also is an athletic facility. It's a skating rink that people go to from throughout the city. Yep. It's not really a sledding hill, but it's used as a sledding hill. I know. I've been there before too. But I'm looking to do that. I'll probably have that here at City Hall, if not here at City Hall at Our Saviors, just because it's close to the neighborhood. But we'll be looking to get input and ideas from individuals. Ideally, people have, maybe you've seen something that's really cool at a park that's not in Hastings. Tell me about that. Right? I've got books and brochures and all sorts of stuff about all sorts of playgrounds. And it's hard for me to visualize, and really it's not my job to design the park, right? I'm not going to be the one using every park. I have my favorites. But I want to get that information from our residents. What are some really cool things that you'd like to see? And I'll remind Commission here and anyone that's watching us that Lions Park specifically, we were approved for, we got a $105,000 matching grant from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. So the city has $105,000 in the game, and we have $105,000 matching. So that's $210,000 to redo the playground at Lions Park. So there's a few things through the grant that we have to keep in mind, and that money can also be spent on accessibility to that playground. So if the path needs to be redone from the street in, that's fine. You know, whatever playground surfacing that we choose or that is chosen, those sorts of things. When I was initially looking at it, my idea is we don't have any like 3-story playgrounds in Hastings, right? So let's get something that's big, and let's do some other stuff that we don't have here in Hastings specifically. Some of the zip line stuff is really cool that's out there. There's naturescape stuff that's out there. And the intent is going to be, this is age 0 to 12. So it might be 2 separate pieces of equipment, 3 separate pieces of equipment, however it shakes out. Or it could be one big massive thing that has components for each age group, right? The smaller and shorter level stuff is going to be your 0 to 5, and the taller and bigger and crazier stuff is going to be that 5 to 12 age. There can be independent pieces that aren't part of a structure. So what are those really cool ones that people want to see here in Hastings? Are there accessibility items that we want to put into this as well? So is there a piece of equipment where we want to be able to get somebody with a wheelchair into, or something similar to that? So I want to get those ideas. I'll take those, turn those ideas into something, and get a request for proposals out to playground manufacturers, playground reps. I want to get those back in by March. I'd like to be able to award those, and then have construction in the May timeframe, hopefully.
I assume that's a good bank account to play with, 210,000?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Yep. I'll always take more, so
Yeah.
if you know anybody.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, what kind of surface are you thinking? Would it be the engineered wood fiber or the newer
My intent would be to go to poured-in-place rubber,
board in place? Yeah.
Yep. at least for the vast majority of it.
Okay.
And again, that is, it's a 20-year lifespan on that. You can make repairs to it. What we have here in town currently has held up well, and it is totally accessible. And there is far less maintenance that occurs to that. So over the course of 20 years, it's actually cheaper to put it in up front than it is to maintain engineered wood fiber throughout 20 years of a playground. Yep. So that'd be the intent.
Is there any sort of, and again, you can point me toward it if it is, I'm just asking a question of inquiry, when it comes to like indoor parks and whatnot, and is that any part of the comprehensive plan, or is it not?
It's not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
Tim. I'm trying to think if it cites that anywhere.
It's more or less
Yeah.
just an inquiry, just looking at the park options.
No. No, we don't have a classification in our current comp plan for that.
Okay.
To that point, it's a good point, because I think we talked about this a couple of years ago. There's some spaces up in Egan that have those indoor parks.
Good Times
And-
Park, that
Yes.
kind of a place?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I don't think
Yeah,
those are
my kids go to that all the time.
taxpayer-supported parks, those are indoor
Right.
parks.
Right.
But it's always frustrating that we go up there as a family, we eat lunch up there, we spend all this time in Egan, in this great indoor park, because it's winter. But I wonder if there's ever, to that point, an ability for Parks and Rec Department to ever think about something like that. Kind of a creative idea of an indoor park like that here. There's plenty of vacant spaces. Target now is open, so.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be a really big one.
Just,
Yeah.
and they're so low
Indoor
maintenance,
splash
you know,
pad and a park.
Oh, yeah.
but
I was even thinking of the Sears in the south part of town where we're at. The Sears just cleared out.
Yeah.
It's not a massive space, but it's I don't know, just thinking a little bit outside of a traditional, kind of green space and just into, I mean, we all know the limited time that we have in green parks.
Yeah,
in the
9
year
months
and
of
just,
winter.
The grass is showing in my yard.
It's brown grass, right?
Well,
Well, to that
But I even
point,
wonder if that would be revenue producing in some ways too, because some of those parks,
Mhm.
they have to be making a profit if they're open.
Yeah.
The limited amount of supervisory with those, oftentimes it's just a camera looking in to make sure you're not, paying the appropriate money to get in. But, yeah, I don't know.
I had a conversation, an e-conversation with the party that owns Extreme Sandbox, because they have indoor facilities now. They use a lot of virtual games, but also the structure as well. And they, as far as teaming with us, they're maxed out on new projects, but they said that they'd always be willing to consult with us about ideas and what's, the new and out there state of the art. So that's a resource for us
Sure.
if we ever want to develop that.
yeah.
But I don't know if you all have checked out their website now. They have grown massively, and with the out-of-state, but also between the outdoor facilities that they have and then the indoor. Another way that they're willing to partner with us is to look at their Extreme Sandbox facility that they have here. They're always open to have that conversation with us.
Sure. That's a great connection. Yeah, and Tim, back to your question, and Joe, your point, and just speaking from my experience has been those types of facilities you often see in community centers,
Yep.
where you'd have an indoor playground as part of a community center along with a multitude of other stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yep.
We have Tilden Community Center as part of the community ed and school district, but again, it's a smaller space. Don't have an indoor playground, but they've got an indoor gym, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yep, I hear
I
you.
just wonder with those sorts of spaces, I mean, even you mentioned like that indoor gym space, and I know clearly that gym is used for a variety of things as a senior center and whatnot, but that seems like the type of space that would be a great one for even just a simple, when you're talking toddlers, I mean, mostly toddler-based, just because of limited space, but I don't know. I
We
don't know
had-
what city, I know that randomly the city has possession of certain properties and whatnot, and just if that was within the scope of this or not.
Yeah, and we had one of those. It was called, in the facility I managed in Oregon, was a Tiny Tots, and it was again 0 to 5, and it was indoors. So you get all the little Tykes cars around, and people are smashing into each other and having a great time, and a variety of different small play equipment and play stuff for kids. And that was the Oregon winters when it's raining all winter long. You can go outside, but it's just wet.
Yeah.
So yeah, those, yep, they're great.
Are those usually like owned by or run by like a city, or are a lot of those places like a private company that goes in and builds those?
The one in Egan that you're talking about is a private venture.
Okay.
The one that we had in Oregon was owned by the city, and we had a board that took care of
Okay.
it, and it was a pay-to-play. And one of the other ones I'm familiar with in that community in Oregon was it was owned by a local church.
Okay.
And they had a separate space that was attached to their campus that was an indoor play equipment, play structure, and we had multiple birthday parties for my children there, and it was nominal fee to use that, but staffed with one person. I think when a group was in there, wasn't typically open to the public on a day-to-day basis, but you could reserve it and use it. There's a variety of different models that are out
Okay.
there.
I just think through the model of even like Sterling, that has that back corner space
Mhm.
that is not like pay to play, but I feel like I'm always amazed at the number of people
I
who use
know.
it when it really gets cold, and just to think outside the box a little bit in that.
There's not really anywhere to go inside here. You have to travel
Mm-hmm.
outside of Hastings to.
Play inside,
Mm-hmm.
unless you play hockey.
There's that.
Chris, when you have the open meeting about Lions Park, how are you gonna notify the residents in the area?
I'll work with our communications coordinator. I always get her position messed up a little bit, but I'll work with Lee, and we'll get information out through the newspaper and through social media, a variety of social medias. I've considered doing some direct mailers My experience with direct mailers has not been fantastic. And again, I'd like it to be more of a community-based meeting than just a neighborhood-based meeting. And we'll look at some other stuff, whether we connect through the schools and that sort of thing too. But we got a little bit of a truncated time frame, but we'll get the word out.
Good.
And once I set the date, I'll let you guys all know too.
Would you like us to be there?
I would absolutely love everybody to be there. The only thing that I have to check in on would be open meeting laws. So I don't know how that all works with this commission, but I believe we could have 3
Okay.
without running into open meeting laws stuff. And that would be 3 at the same time. So if people wanted to cycle in and out, we could probably take care of that. So just so we're all in the clear.
Can you clarify what that law?
Not very well, but I know if you have too many people on an elected or appointed body, that it gets into open meeting, so then everything that you do there becomes public. And it has to be you have to,
It could be
Anywhere.
anywhere.
Yep.
If
Okay.
you meet for coffee, if you meet 3 out of the 7.
yeah. It becomes an open meeting
Open meeting.
and a
Okay.
public meeting, and to hold public meetings, we have to provide notification to the public,
Okay.
so they have an opportunity to be there.
Okay.
So
Because as soon as you have a quorum, you can start making decisions.
you can do business, yep.
So you have to stay on the quorum.
I need to clarify all that with our city attorney, but my intent and my hope would be that we would have representation from the commission there, absolutely. With that, I don't know, Paige, do you have any other updates that you want to plug?
I do. We do have some upcoming events in January and February. The first one is actually tomorrow evening, Wednesday, January 10th. It's at Levy Park. We have a little heat wave, so it's going to be nice and warm out, but not so good for skating. But we still encourage families and individuals to come down and attend the event. We'll also have some live Raptors there with hot chocolate and music. You can request a song. And then there'll be a Q&A for the new art installation that was painted on the portable warming house, which is actually a shipping container that was designed specifically to be a warming house at Levy Park. So please join us for that if you are able. And we also have Family Skate Night coming up next Thursday, as well as Teen Skate Night coming up February 15th. And Family Skate Night is at Lions Park, and Teen Skate Night is at Pioneer Park. We have additional information on our city website and our city Facebook.
Perfect. That's all from me, unless any of our commissioners have any updates additionally that they would like to provide.
I don't have any updates.
Then tell us when our next meeting is.
Oh, Tuesday, February 13th at 6 o'clock here.
Right here.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Meeting is adjourned.